Hi, I'm Tim, welcome to our channel, and thanks for logging on. Today, by popular demand of one special client, I present the Parmigiani Fleurier Tonda Chronor Anniversaire, a limited edition of 25 pieces. Amintas, this one is for you. So this timepiece celebrates 20 years of Michel Parmigiani building watches under his own name. Established in 1996, Parmigiani Fleurier has grown to become one of the most uniquely integrated and vertically integrated manufacturers in Swiss high horology. And this watch, 18 karat gold with blue enamel dial, celebrates 20 years of success. Now the watch is large. On my wrist, 16 centimeters in circumference. The timepiece is 42.1 millimeters across the broad of the case, from 9 to 3, not inclusive of the coaxial rattrapant pusher in the crown or the chronograph pushers in the lugs. Now, the timepiece is generously sized, but not oversized. It doesn't have a bulk to it. It has a grace to it. 14.6 millimeters in thickness. You can see it has a generously sloped conical bezel, such that it will actually slide fairly easily underneath a formal cuff or a dress sleeve. It wears well with a suit, but it's perhaps better unencumbered by sleeves. This is a watch designed to be seen. Now, Parmigiani's signature teardrop lugs are present in force. If you measure from extremity to extremity, the span across the wrist is 51 millimeters, but those lugs are worth mentioning because they change the way the watch looks and wears. An innovation of Michel Parmigiani in the 90s, the idea was to create a case form that separated the lugs and their function from the case and its functions, the end result being better conformity to the curve of a wrist, and you can see the effective camber that those lugs create. There's a reason why Parmigiani has stuck with the design. Now the strap is fascinating because it's exceptional, but also because it's one of the few pieces of this watch not created by a Parmigiani family company. Instead, it's created by longtime partner Hermes, a wonderfully supple, almost buttery smooth, matte finish, brown, almost rusty toned alligator leather. It has folded flanks, monotone stitch, and substantial bolstering down its center. Well, this normally creates stiffness in a strap. This one is so smooth that it simply creates body, so that visually it flows quite seamlessly into the swell of the lugs. Now again, that shape, the teardrop echoed in the pin buckle, there isn't a single square millimeter of this watch that has not been thoughtfully and self-consciously styled. There is no default design at work here, and the pin buckle, like the rest of the watch, created by a Parmigiani family company. You'll also note on the underside of the strap, a wonderful distressed calfskin leather, incredibly supple. As soft as the gaiter is on the top, the calf is even smoother on the bottom. Part of the benefit of Parmigiani being an integrated manufacturer with design and fabrication taking place in the same organization is that parts such as the strap and the case junction can be built in sync and designed to work together. You'll note that the strap, despite a straight spring bar, very close hewn to the flanks of the case, and yet even though it creates that integrated look, it doesn't have the inflexibility or the desire to fight and flare that sometimes a strap that's close hewn to a case can have, and that's because each flank of the case, built by LAB, Parmigiani's case specialist, has a small scalloped portion, so the strap's actually countersunk into the flank of the case. It has its own little garage so that it isn't constrained and it can bend easily to fit the arc of a smaller wrist like mine. Ergonomic excellence in practice. Now, I'm going to tease the movement, but I'm going to start with the case and the dial. Now, of course, built by LAB, the case is sensuous and distinctive. Compound curves are everywhere. There does not seem to be a single line that flows in only one direction. It has a sensuality, almost a biomorphism to it that distinguishes it from almost anything else built in Switzerland. And of course, the watch is large, but it's not ungainly. Parmigiani uses, again, integration of component design. It uses the size of the case to open up the dial such that its hour track, its tachymetric scale calibrations, its grand date and marquee at 12 o'clock, its sub-registers are all able to expand and breathe. So though heavily calibrated, the dial is not crowded. Again, design of the case, the bezel, and the dial all occurring in the same organization means these pieces can be designed to work in sync. Parmigiani is best described as something like a Portuguese man of war, a bunch of individual organisms existing as part of a symbiotic whole, and that's continued on the dial. You can see it has a unique tritone, white gold for the diamond-shaped faceted hour indices, white gold for Parmigiani's unique and heavily luminescent delta hands at center, neither alphas nor dauphine, they are delta, and of course that warm rose gold with lancet seconds hand and a broad counterweight. Of course, there are some hidden delights. The first being the fact that the dial is entirely in grand faux enamel. Multiple firings at up to 800 degrees centigrade. As many as 20 are used to create this incredible gloss sheen. Vitreous paint eventually hardened, solidified, stabilized, and finally treated to exhibit all of the calibrations, the white marks atop the blue. It has the look of something that's permanently wet, almost as though you could plunge a finger deep into the dial. Again, it's designed for longevity. Like the rest of the watch, like Swiss hierology in general, the idea is to transcend time. And enamel dials, over the years, they don't bow to the effects of UV rays. They don't bow to the effects of moisture. They retain that gorgeous gloss gleam deep into their lives, which, I'm sorry to say, Amintus, will probably outlive you. But that's a reassuring thought when you're buying from the absolute top shelf. Now, the rattrapant or split-second system allows you to time two concurrent events, such as two runners around a track, two cars around a racecourse, or two yachts at a regatta. After the first crosses a reference point, such as a finish line, you stop it using the coaxial pusher in the crown. Then, when the second, perhaps car or yacht or runner, passes the reference point, again, you stop that second's hand, and that split, the difference between them, is the distance between the runners, the race cars, or the yacht. Now, of course, you can resume the counting for the next lap, the next turn around the course, the next run around the race course. That's the advantage of a split-second chronograph. Two events timed simultaneously, and you don't have to even reset the chronograph to resume timing. Now, the movement is perhaps the pièce de résistance of this watch. As beautiful as the case, the dial, the strap are, the movement is really the heart and soul of this watch. Now, Parmigiani companies, whether Eta Calpa, Cadrance Habillage making the dial, LAB making the case, or Valche Movement, of course, building the caliber PF361, all are focused on building an extraordinary timepiece, and there is nothing more extraordinary in this watch than the 18-karat rose gold bridges and plates of this movement. Over 300 parts, 35 jewels, all working in sync. It all starts with the balance, oscillating at 10 beats per second or 5 hertz. The higher frequency allows it to defy the frequency of vibrations experienced typically on the wrist. By operating at a frequency that keeps it out of phase with those wrist vibrations, it maintains better timing stability. The dual-anchored balance bridge and the free-sprung balance ensure that the watch has superior resistance to shock or vibration-induced timing deviation, while at the same time allowing the watch to take a precise regulation from a Parmigiani watchmaker and hold it in the face of the slings and arrows of life on the wrist. The bridges constructed of 18-karat rose gold are extraordinary, first because that's not easy to do, and second because they're entirely skeletonized, revealing the entirety of the works of the watch. Now, it should also be noted that finishing does not receive short shrift. The two most difficult acts of finishing in movement construction, black polish or optically smooth metal, and interior angle finishing are both present in force black polish on the heads of the screws, as well as the crenellated columns of the column wheels. The interior angles, or the acute angles, where two lines meet, represent the most difficult finishing assignment in high horology. Keeping the cleft sharp without damaging the delicate junction of the two planes is the most difficult act, and usually movement manufacturers include 1, 2, maybe half a dozen. Instead, Parmigiani simply drapes the entire caliber in interior angles, each one immaculately finished. Impressive. Now, you'll note two column wheels for actuating the column wheel vertical clutch chronograph caliber. The first column wheel is controlled by the coaxial pusher in the crown. It operates the second hand, the second's hand for those keeping track, and you can see it acts on the column wheel just below my thumb. You'll also note that the column wheel is actuating two levers that control pincers that alternately seize and release the chronograph center wheel that controls that second's hand. So note carefully, I'm going to release the pincers. You'll note the revolving column wheel, and you'll note that the chronograph center wheel now springs into motion. On the opposite side, the hands are now moving in sync once more. Now I can also stop the chronograph outright using the master column wheel, now below my thumb. Now it's stopped, and now it's reset. And because of the skeletonization, you can see the vertical clutch working at center. The vertical clutch adds an additional refinement. Not only does it make for smoother motion of the chronograph seconds hand, it also allows you to keep the chronograph running continuously if you prefer the appearance of center seconds to match hours and minutes rather than resorting to a sub-register. That's part of the benefit and the refinement of a vertical clutch. Finally, the watch, manually wound, features a mainspring enabling a superior 65-hour power reserve, extraordinary in light of the high beat balance, which conventionally reduces power reserve. And again, no stone left unturned, no detail overlooked. You can see through the skeletonized bridges the mainspring barrel, blazoned with the image of the Teardrop Lug, the icon of the Parmigiani manufacture. Well, you can see this watch on our channel, but unfortunately, this one's already been claimed. Amintus, congratulations. Enjoy your new watch.